CM Punk is coming to GCW. Also on top of that, former WWE and Impact Wrestling star has come out and talked about joining AEW. And on top of that, if you're a fan of Impact Wrestling, if you are a fan of New Japan Pro Wrestling, then I have some really good news for you in this video. My name is Zango. On this channel, I bring you the latest news and rumors in the world of pro wrestling. I give you my reaction, and I'd love to hear yours. So go ahead and drop a comment down below and subscribe. All right, guys, Impact Wrestling and WrestleCon have announced that Impact Wrestling will be having a show during WrestleMania weekend this year. Also, so will New Japan Pro Wrestling. Now, this is fantastic news despite the fact that we have a pandemic. I'm just extremely excited about the idea of WrestleMania weekend coming back to normal, you know. And one thing that has to be said here, we don't know if AEW will have any involvement. The last time I remember Impact Wrestling did anything during Mania weekend, it was their joint show with Lucha Underground, if I remember correctly. But nonetheless, it's very exciting. I believe Impact Wrestling will stream this live on their streaming app, Impact Plus. And then, of course, New Japan Pro Wrestling does have plans to do tapings for NJPW Strong. Now, if AEW could somehow get involved, I would be really happy about that because, you know, let's just face it, WrestleMania weekend is huge and it's always going to be associated with WWE. But every time I've gone to WrestleMania weekend, I went to Evolve shows, Progress shows, ROH, whatever it may be. There's always a lot of cool things happening, and I think we need to get back to that. I think it was really healthy for the pro wrestling world to have multiple shows, whether it's GCW, whether it is, you know, Impact or ROH or whatever it may be. We don't know if AEW has plans, but we do know that New Japan and Impact and ROH will all be there. So the good news here is wrestling is coming back strong. Hopefully, it continues to thrive. If you are a fan of Impact Wrestling, I will tell you guys too, the venue itself is not the biggest venue, but it should still be a fairly decent sized venue. So I imagine when tickets do go on sale, it could be kind of limited. Just kind of keep that in mind if you guys are interested. Same should be said for New Japan Pro Wrestling. All right, guys, former WWE NXT superstar Frankie Monet, a.k.a. Taya Valkyrie from Impact Wrestling, has come out and spoken about joining AEW. I do want to make it very clear here that Frankie Monet, Taya Valkyrie, has always been a great wrestler, but we don't know any sort of interest coming from AEW. But if you are Tony Khan and you're looking at your women's division right now, I would assume that you are looking at Taya Valkyrie because she is obviously very talented, especially a lot of the work that she did in AAA and Impact Wrestling is very notable stuff, despite the fact that maybe her career in WWE wasn't that great. It wasn't even really her fault. It was just short-lived. Nonetheless, Taya Valkyrie recently appeared on East Coast Autograph Auctions about whether or not she'd be joining AEW, and this is what she had to say. Of course, I would go to AEW. I mean, they are doing something different. A lot of my peers and my best friends, my brothers, Phoenix and Pentagon, are over there, so why not? Let's wait and see what happens. Now, the reason why I actually want to talk about this is because when it comes to AEW's free agency, there are quite a few women that are going to be on the free agency block soon. We know Ember Moon was recently released. We know Taya Valkyrie, Frankie Monet was released. And we know that Eva Marie was released as well. Now, the reason why I mention Eva Marie as well is because she does have a huge following outside of wrestling, which could be pretty damn helpful for AEW. I understand the audience may not want that, but I think AEW can do something with anybody, realistically, as long as they choose to book them correctly. And they have to know what their audience wants, right? So I'm not saying AEW should immediately sign Eva Marie, but my point that I'm making is Eva Marie and AEW probably could help AEW in certain regards. Now, maybe that doesn't mean putting the belt on Eva Marie, but maybe it means Eva Marie being used in a capacity as like a valet or a manager, right? Nonetheless, Taya Valkyrie going to AEW, in my opinion, is a massive signing. I think it would be a really good deal for AEW to sign her. And I think AEW needs to really focus on that women's division. I do. I think it's gotten better, but I still think they need to do a little bit more. And it's not the women's fault. I think Ty Conti and Penelope Ford and what everybody's doing, it's getting better. I just feel like they don't really have the most important storylines happening within that division. And I think you can start with Taya Valkyrie, making her a legitimate challenger to Britt Baker, Thunder Rosa, Jade Cargill, and so forth. And then also keep in mind, if she decides to retire in AEW, you could put her in a coaching position. And I think that would be also really important. You have somebody like Serena Deeb, who's already there, who is massively influential. I see Taya Valkyrie as another key signing in that regard. And if I'm AEW, that's something I would be looking to do as soon as possible. All right, guys, CM Punk is coming to GCW. He will be inducting Dave Prazak in the GCW Independent Wrestling Hall of Fame. And this is some really interesting stuff here because, GCW has really grown significantly throughout the last few years. And before CM Punk returned to pro wrestling and specifically AEW, if you would have asked me if CM Punk would be in GCW, my answer would be no. Now that CM Punk is in AEW, we're starting to see a side of CM Punk where he seems to be more in love with wrestling. And I don't want to speak for the guy, but like when he was out of wrestling, it almost seemed like he fell out of love with it, right? The way he would speak about returning and all of these different things. But when I see CM Punk is out there with guys like MJF and Darby, when I see him on Twitter and when I see him talking about wrestling and talking about AEW, he legitimately looks happy in AEW. And I think that's also really cool to see that not only is he happy, but he's now doing more involved. He's more involved in the wrestling world in general. So with CM Punk coming to GCW, obviously that's a really big deal for GCW. That's a massive deal for GCW. Dave Prazak has also had one hell of a career. So with CM Punk being the one to induct him, it's really cool. GCW doing this Indie Wrestling Hall of Fame is also a really good idea, in my opinion. I think GCW has been making all of the right decisions to continue growing and growing and growing. And despite the fact that they're technically an indie wrestling company, they're really starting to make strides in terms of like the searchability. More people are searching for them than some of the other wrestling companies. And I think that makes a big mark for them and where they stand in this industry in general. I also want to point out, CM Punk has not been confirmed to wrestle at this point, but it would be pretty damn sweet if just maybe CM Punk could get involved at the Hammerstein Ballroom show, right? When they do this show, just maybe in some capacity, having CM Punk hit a GTS on somebody, do something. I think it would be really cool. And to me, that's something I think now is a possibility because CM Punk is even having some sort of involvement with GCW. So all in all, really cool news. I want to know what you guys think. Don't forget, if you guys are new to my channel, I have actually just launched Ango Plays. It's a new YouTube channel where I talk about the latest in video games. I'm going to be bringing you guys gaming content, WWE 2K22, AEW's video games. That way I can keep that separate from this channel. We're already over 500 subscribers. We're trying to hit 1,000. So if you guys would like to help a brother out, if you guys are into wrestling video games specifically, that channel will be for you. And in fact, I also uploaded my first video on there. So I'd greatly appreciate if you guys check it out. Otherwise, my name is Ango. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. And I will see you next time right here on youtube.com/AngoYT.